Imagine being drenched in cold water, not from a storm, not from an accident, but from a deliberate act of power and cruelty. Now imagine being the one person in that room who could change everything. Stick around. This story will challenge what you think you know about status, respect, and who's really in control. And before we go any further, hit that like button if you believe every human deserves to be treated with basic dignity, regardless of their job title. Then drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. We read every single one. The tension in the room was suffocating. "Don't you ever talk back to me, Marcus?" hissed the man in the suit, his voice sharp, cold, and dripping with disdain. "You're nothing here. Nothing. Clean this place up, or don't bother showing your face tomorrow." "I've scrubbed this floor more times than I can count, sir," replied Camille, the janitor, her voice calm but resolute. Marcus didn't respond with words. Instead, without blinking, he grabbed a full cup of water and dumped it directly on her. The freezing liquid hit Camille's head, ran down her face, soaked through her shirt, and puddled around her freshly mopped floor. She gasped, not from the temperature but from the sheer malice of the act. "There," Marcus sneered. "Now you've got something real to clean." But what he didn't know, what no one in that office knew, was that Camille wasn't just a cleaner. She was the future CEO of the entire company. Boss, ever been in a situation where you were underestimated just because of how you looked or what people thought you were? Share your story in the comments. We want to hear it. The headquarters of Logan Dynamics gleamed from floor to ceiling. On the top executive floor, under the glare of fluorescent lights, Camille Taylor quietly pushed a mop across the marble surface. Her uniform bore the name tag Carla. Not Camille. Not Miss Taylor. And certainly not Camille Taylor, the woman who had once inked deals worth millions. Her hands, once adorned with jewelry and manicured to perfection, were now calloused, red from harsh cleaning supplies. Her back ached, but she didn't slow down. From behind her came the sharp rhythm of polished Italian leather shoes. Marcus Vaughn, operations manager, was approaching. A man who had shared conference tables with her many times before, though clearly he had never really seen her. He stopped beside her, shoving a pile of reports into her hands with the arrogance of someone who believed power couldn't be challenged. Camille's eyes flickered, eyes that once held court in investor meetings. But now she simply nodded, knelt, and picked up the wet papers. Every part of her wanted to stand up, tear off the disguise, and fire him on the spot. But that wasn't the mission. Camille Taylor, aged 28, a Harvard Business School alum, had become a rising star in the tech industry for her trailblazing work in clean energy and sustainable finance. Her name had even landed on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. But Camille didn't get here by accident. Logan Dynamics wasn't just a company. It was a legacy, founded by her father, Charles Logan, 35 years ago in a cramped garage with nothing but a vision and a loan from his grandmother. From startup to a $5.2 billion tech empire, Charles had shattered ceilings, becoming one of the rare black CEOs in Silicon Valley. Now in his 60s, Charles still led the company with wisdom and fire, but the toll had become visible. The heart attack 6 months ago changed everything. His doctors were clear: cut the 80-hour weeks. Step back. Reconsider the future. Succession planning, once a someday conversation, had become immediate. Camille was the natural successor. She had the education, the experience, and the boardroom presence. But Charles had one last concern. He voiced it quietly over dinner one night in their glass-walled home above the city. "Camille," he said, his voice warm but serious, "I couldn't be prouder of what you've achieved. Your mind is sharp. Your vision's clear. But there's one thing you still don't know." She set her fork down, her brow rising. "What don't I know, Dad?" He sighed, the weight of his words decades in the making. "You've never worked in the trenches. You've never seen how the company really runs, how people are treated when no one's watching. When titles disappear. When power hides behind job descriptions." Camille opened her mouth to respond, but Charles raised a hand. "When I started this business, I was the janitor, the accountant, the sales rep, the engineer. I learned every part of it because I lived it. And the culture we built, it started from the ground up. But lately, I've been hearing whispers that it's changed." He locked eyes with her, eyes just like hers. "You can't lead what you don't understand." "Not truly." She didn't back down. She leaned forward. "So what do you suggest?" "What they came up with that night. It was bold, risky, ingenious. Camille would go undercover for 2 weeks on the night cleaning crew. No executive perks. No shortcuts. No recognition. She'd learn what her team saw, the good, the bad, and the unacceptable. The transformation was complete. Her silk blouses were swapped for faded polos. Her signature blowout gave way to natural curls, tucked beneath a simple scarf. Manicures gone. Contacts in. Designer glasses gone. Even her diamond studs, tiny as they were replaced with plain hoops. She had stepped out of the boardroom and into reality. Let me ask you something. If you had the chance to walk in someone else's shoes, to really understand how they're treated, would you do it? Would you let go of your title and pride to uncover the truth? Because that's exactly what Camille Taylor just did. And Marcus Vaughn? He had no idea what was coming. How far would you go to uncover the truth about the company you were about to inherit? Would you trade your office view for a mop? Your name badge for anonymity? Stick with us, because what one woman discovered from the ground floor of her father's empire will leave you questioning everything about workplace culture. And hey, if you're tired of seeing good people get mistreated in silence, hit that like button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Let's make your voice part of this story. Her gold hoops were gone. Her polished suits tucked away. In their place stood Carla, a completely unremarkable woman in a baggy janitorial uniform, invisible to the very world she used to run. To everyone at Logan Dynamics, she was just another cleaner. A name on a clipboard. A face they'd never remember. Her father, Charles Logan, had arranged it all. Through a third-party agency called Clear Clean, he had her quietly assigned to the night shift, ensuring no red flags popped up in HR. Everything about the plan had been executed with precision. From the fake resume to the generic ID badge, her cover identity was airtight. She had 2 weeks. That was the deal. 2 weeks to determine whether her father's billion-dollar company still lived up to the values of respect, integrity, and innovation that it had been built on. But what Carla, formerly Camille, didn't know was just how much these next 2 weeks would shift her view of the company and of the world. The following evening, Camille stood in the dim hallway, tugging nervously at her oversized uniform. Her hands, once adorned with rings and polish, fidgeted with the unfamiliar plastic badge clipped to her chest. It read, Carla T., Facilities Team. At exactly 10 p.m. her shift began. Her orientation was short and impersonal. A rushed tour of basic procedures, a list of chemicals and equipment, and a firm warning. Any theft would result in immediate termination, and possibly criminal charges. The supervisor barely made eye contact as he tossed her a ring of keys and a laminated checklist. Camille had spent years commanding rooms, pitching to investors, and running high-level meetings. Now, people walked straight past her as if she didn't exist. Executives sidestepped her without acknowledgement. Some even bumped her cart without so much as a glance, let alone an apology. When she entered occupied offices, employees carried on as though no one had walked in, openly discussing sensitive information with zero concern for the invisible woman taking out their trash. By the end of her first shift, her hands had blistered. Her back throbbed. Her ego was bruised, but her eyes were wide open. She began noticing patterns, which employees treated cleaners like human beings, and which didn't. The company she had once believed to be forward-thinking and values-driven looked very different from the ground up. And that was just day one. By the start of her second night, Camille had adapted physically. The muscle aches had dulled. Her hands had formed calluses. She'd even learned how to shift her weight to avoid strain while mopping. But no amount of physical endurance could prepare her for what was coming next, because that night she met Raymond Briggs. Raymond was the operations supervisor. 45 years old, with a steely voice and a reputation for perfection, he'd clawed his way up through years of long nights and cold ambition. To executives, Raymond was organized, professional, always on point. To the cleaning staff, he was a tyrant. Raymond treated the janitorial crew like pawns in a game he controlled. His mood could swing from indifferent to furious in seconds. His standards? Impossible. On Camille's second night, Raymond strode into the hallway for a surprise inspection. Holding up a white glove, he rubbed it along the top of a ceiling vent, an area not even on the standard cleaning checklist, and held it up like a crime scene exhibit. This, he announced coldly, is disgusting. He turned to the crew. If this building is going to represent excellence, then every inch, including the parts you think no one notices, needs to shine. Then came the punishment. He ordered the team to re-clean the entire third-floor east wing, forcing them to stay 2 hours past their scheduled end time. No extra pay. No overtime. Maria, one of the seasoned team members, gently reminded him that those ceiling vents were only due for quarterly deep cleaning. Raymond cut her off mid-sentence. If I wanted excuses, I'd go talk to HR. What I want is competence, something that seems to be in short supply around here. He barked the last part loud enough to echo. But Camille? She noticed something else. Raymond didn't just treat the crew poorly. He targeted her. What? Maybe because she was new. Maybe because even beneath the baggy uniform, something about her presence unsettled him. A hint of posture. A flicker of confidence. A steady gaze she couldn't fully hide. And Raymond couldn't stand it. He made her his personal project. No matter how well she cleaned, he always found fault. A smudge only visible under flashlight. Lint no vacuum could truly catch. A reflection that showed fingerprints no one else could see. One night, during a solo shift cleaning the executive restrooms, Camille was midway through scrubbing when he stormed in, unannounced. He didn't wait for her to finish. Instead, he began inspecting the area immediately, interrupting her work to criticize every detail. Are you deliberately this incompetent? He spat. Or is it just natural for you? He made sure everyone within earshot could hear. This right here, he continued, pointing at her cart, is why we should replace all of you with cleaning robots. At least they follow directions the first time. Camille didn't react. She didn't flinch. She didn't answer. She bit her tongue and stared down at the mop in her hands. But what she wanted to say. Oh, that moment was coming. Tell me something, have you ever had a boss talk down to you like that? Someone who forgot your humanity just because of your job title? Let us know in the comments. Your story matters. Camille Taylor wasn't going to take this forever. But she knew this wasn't the time to fight back. Not yet. How much are you willing to endure before you decide enough is enough? What if someone treated you like you didn't matter, just because of your job or the color of your skin? Stay with us because this next moment changes everything. And hey, if you've ever felt invisible in your own workplace, go ahead and hit that like button and drop your story in the comments. Let your voice be heard. She swallowed the insult. As vice president, Camille Taylor could have had Raymond Briggs escorted out with a single call. But as Carla the cleaner, she had no choice but to lower her gaze and mumble an apology, then promise to do better. That didn't stop others from noticing what was happening. Marcus, a seasoned janitor who'd been with the company for over a decade, gently pulled Camille aside after Raymond had humiliated her yet again. Her hands were still trembling as she restocked her supplies. You've got to keep your distance from that man, Marcus whispered, casting a quick glance over his shoulder to make sure Raymond wasn't lurking nearby. He's got a mean streak. Picks one person to mess with. This week it's you. And then came Thursday night. It was near midnight, and the executive floor of Logan Dynamics was mostly empty. Camille had just finished refilling her mop bucket when she heard them, Raymond's polished leather shoes tapping steadily down the marble hallway. She kept her head down, focused on her task. Her cart was tucked neatly to the side, just as she'd been taught. But as Raymond passed, he suddenly swung his arm wide, intentionally smacking her carefully organized cart and sending it crashing to the floor. The contents spilled out loudly, echoing through the quiet corridor. He paused, glanced at the mess, smirked, and then stepped right into the pool of cleaning solution. He dragged dirty footprints across the section of floor Camille had just spent an hour polishing. Not once did he apologize. Not even a backward glance. He acted like she didn't exist. Camille stood frozen, staring at the disaster he had caused. And in that moment, something shifted. This wasn't just about being disrespected. It wasn't about being overlooked. This was cruelty. Intentional cruelty. The kind that thrives when no one's watching, because no one expects the cleaner to matter. She knelt slowly, biting back the tears that were rising with her anger. The mop handle trembled in her hands. But her resolve? It hardened like steel. This wasn't just about proving herself as her father's successor anymore. It was about justice, for every single worker who made this company run and never got a sliver of thanks. Over the next few days she kept her head down, but her eyes wide open. She documented everything. The time. The place. The people who watched but said nothing. The ones who laughed. The ones who turned away. She was building a case, brick by brick, quote by quote. Because when the moment came, she wasn't just going to confront Raymond. She was going to expose the rot at the core of the culture. And right on cue, Raymond returned. You think you're clever, don't you? He hissed, stepping far too close for comfort. Camille didn't reply. She calmly collected her supplies, intent on moving to the next room without giving him the reaction he was craving. I'm speaking to you, he barked. When a supervisor addresses you, you respond with, yes, sir, or no, sir. Don't they teach respect in whatever gutter you came from? Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, she answered, each word bitter on her tongue. But Raymond wasn't done. As she turned to mop the hallway again, he stepped deliberately onto the freshly cleaned surface, smearing his dirty soles over her work. "This is still filthy," he shouted, raising his voice for no one in particular. "Can't you do anything right? Look at these stains. These marks." Camille looked down. There were no stains, only the fresh tracks he had just left. The floor gleamed under the ceiling lights. It was perfect, until he walked on it. "I just cleaned it, sir," she said, her tone steady but polite. "It was spotless before you." "Are you contradicting me?" he snapped, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you think you know more about cleanliness standards at Logan Dynamics than I do?" And then, without warning, he grabbed a full cup of water from the conference room table and poured it over her. The icy water splashed over her head, soaking her curls, her shirt, her pants, pooling around her boots on the floor she had just cleaned. She gasped. Not from the cold, but from the sheer, calculated cruelty of it. Raymond leaned in, voice low and slow. "There," he said. "Now you have something real to clean." He dropped the empty cup beside her and turned away. "And don't even think about leaving," he called over his shoulder. "You stay here until it's dry. I'll be checking before you clock out. Have you ever been treated differently because of how you look, or where you work? Let us know in the comments. Let's talk about it, because stories like this shouldn't be ignored." Camille stood completely still. Water dripped from her clothes and hair, soaking into her uniform and forming puddles around her feet. The shame wasn't just in what he'd done, it was in the knowledge that he thought he'd get away with it, that he probably had before. And she realized he likely wasn't the only one. Tears welled in her eyes but never fell. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. With slow, deliberate movements, she grabbed her mop once again. And this time, every stroke across the wet floor came with a vow. Raymond Briggs would face consequences, not just for how he treated her, but for how he created a culture of silence and fear for every unseen worker at Logan Dynamics. Because Camille Taylor had seen enough, and the reckoning was coming. But Raymond wasn't the only storm on the horizon. Derek Phillips, the company's marketing director, wore his charm like a second suit. At 42, with his designer glasses and carefully curated social feeds, Derek looked every bit the forward-thinking executive. But underneath, there were cracks forming. And Camille was about to see them for herself. Derek Langston was the kind of executive who always looked like he'd stepped out of a glossy magazine spread, perfectly styled hair, custom suits that whispered wealth without screaming status. Camille Taylor, still undercover as Carla, first crossed paths with him in the second week of her janitorial assignment. His office happened to be on her cleaning rotation that night. According to the schedule, the task should have taken 20 minutes. But thanks to Derek, it swallowed over 3 hours of her shift. She stepped in a little after 10 p.m. and found him still at his desk, fixated on his screen. Without so much as looking up, he spoke. "Oh, good you're here. This place is a mess. We had a big brainstorming session today. Needs a deep clean." Camille scanned the office. Her trained eye caught nothing out of the ordinary. A couple of empty coffee cups. Some papers stacked neatly. This wasn't a disaster, it wasn't even slightly dirty. Still, she nodded and got to work. As she emptied the bins and moved on to dust the bookshelf, she felt his eyes flicking back and forth between his monitor and her movements. Then, as she polished the glass coffee table, Derek made a show of clearing his throat. "That's not how you clean glass," he said, rising from his chair. "You're leaving streaks. Use circular motions, not straight lines." He hovered as she worked, offering nitpicks like a self-proclaimed expert, despite his marketing background having nothing to do with sanitation. Once she vacuumed the carpet and sanitized every high-touch area to protocol, Derek strutted around the office as if performing an Olympic-level inspection. He ran his finger along a surface, held it up to the light, and shook his head. "This isn't acceptable," he declared. "The windows still have marks, the carpet has lint, and, did you even dust the top of the picture frames?" Camille blinked. Everything was spotless. Still, she swallowed her frustration and simply said, "Yes, sir." She started over. Her second round of cleaning was even more detailed than the first. But Derek, never satisfied, found brand new grievances. "The baseboards," he said. "Still dusty. And my desk? That's not organized properly." She had been instructed not to touch any personal items or papers, but now, apparently, even that was wrong. "Oh, and what's that smell?" he added, sniffing the air dramatically. "Did you use the wrong product? This room should smell fresh, not like chemicals." And so, round 3 began. By the time Derek finally left, after finding faults that barely existed, it was well past midnight. Camille was left behind, exhausted and significantly behind schedule. Soon she discovered this wasn't unusual. Derek had a reputation among the cleaning crew. He was notorious for manufacturing messes, balancing coffee cups on the edges of bins so they'd spill, sprinkling paper clips on clean carpets, then berating staff over poor cleaning standards. It wasn't just personal. It was a pattern. And Camille had had enough. After what happened with Raymond Briggs and the water bottle incident, she decided to test the company's internal system. If Logan Dynamics truly cared about respect and inclusion, their HR department would do something about this. Right? Kendra Mitchell, the company's HR director, seemed like the ideal person to approach. Mid-40s with a warm smile and a wardrobe that leaned more casual than corporate, Kendra was the face of HR in every office poster across the company. Her photo sat next to the words, "Your voice matters. Talk to me anytime." A rainbow sticker on her door declared it a safe space. During a quiet lunch hour, Camille approached her office. Kendra greeted her with a cheerful welcome, offering a seat and even a fresh cup of coffee. "So, how can I help you?" she asked, folding her hands gently. "I don't believe we've met. You must be new with the facilities team?" Camille gave a small nod and carefully explained what had happened. She kept her voice neutral, sticking to facts the way she'd advise someone else to if she were still VP. No emotion, no embellishment. Kendra listened closely, her head tilted in practiced sympathy. When Camille finished, the HR director let out a thoughtful sigh and leaned forward to pat her hand. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," she began, her tone shifting into something more polished, measured. "We take all workplace concerns very seriously at Logan Dynamics." But then, her voice softened in a new way. "That said, I think this might be a case of misunderstanding. Sometimes, in hierarchical workplaces, the dynamic between supervisors and support staff can feel harsh. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's harassment." Camille's expression didn't change, but inside she felt it, a slow, familiar burn. She knew this language. Kendra wasn't reacting. She was managing the complaint. Have you ever brought a serious concern to HR, only to hear words like miscommunication or misunderstanding? Comment below and share your experience. We want to know how it was handled and how it made you feel. Kendra went on, her words polished to perfection. "Raymond has a very demanding role. And we expect high standards across the board. I'm sure he didn't intend to make you feel uncomfortable. I'll make a note of this and speak with him informally." Camille nodded slowly, the disappointment settling in. She had just been drenched with cold water by a supervisor in a hallway, and the response from HR was essentially a pat on the head and a promise to speak with him. She stood up, thanked Kendra for her time, and left the office without another word. But inside, something was boiling. Because Camille Taylor had just learned the truth. HR wasn't there to protect the employees. It was there to protect the company. And if justice was going to happen, it would have to start with her. Camille Taylor could hear it in Kendra's voice. Beneath the calm corporate tone was something else. A subtle, patronizing dismissal. "You're just part of the cleaning crew," Kendra said gently but firmly. "You have to understand the hierarchy in a place like this. You can't compare your experience to that of our full-time staff." The words were wrapped in sugar but laced with venom. Beneath the polished phrases and HR platitudes, the message was unmistakable. "You don't count." Camille stood, thanked her politely, and turned to leave. As if offering a final pearl of wisdom, Kendra added in a lowered voice, "Between us, Raymond can be particular. He sets high standards and sometimes communicates them a bit directly. Try not to take it personally. In a corporate setting, a thick skin is an asset." The rainbow safe space sticker on her office door suddenly felt like a cruel joke. Apparently, its promise didn't apply after 5 p.m., or to the people scrubbing the floors. What Kendra didn't realize, Camille had recorded the entire exchange. The audio would later become essential evidence, not just of individual failure, but of how deeply the system was stacked against workers at the bottom. But if Raymond and Derek had shown Camille the systemic cruelty of corporate culture, her encounter with Veronica Weston, Senior Vice President of Sales, would expose something even darker. Open, physical aggression. Veronica Weston was something of a legend at Logan Dynamics. Her sales team always outperformed, her conference talks packed auditoriums, and her hardball tactics landed multi-million-dollar deals that shifted the company's position in the market. At 45, Veronica exuded unshakable authority and zero tolerance for contradiction. Camille's confrontation with her came on a Friday evening in week 3 of her assignment. She had been assigned to clean the 38th-floor conference room. Just as she stepped through the door with her cart, a sharp voice sliced through the air. "Excuse me, Where do you think you're going? Camille froze. She turned and responded calmly, I apologize, ma'am. This room is scheduled for cleaning at 9 p.m. I can return once your meeting is over. Polite, respectful, professional. Anywhere else, that would have been the end of the conversation. Not with Veronica Weston. How dare you interrupt my meeting? She snapped, storming toward Camille. Do I seriously have to waste my time teaching basic courtesy to someone who cleans toilets for a living? Veronica's voice was loud enough to stop conversation in nearby offices. Through the conference room's glass walls, employees began peeking out, but no one stepped in. Camille had survived being soaked by Raymond. She had swallowed Derek's calculated humiliations. But something about this, being screamed at for simply following her cleaning schedule, sparked a deeper resolve. She straightened slightly. With all due respect, she said evenly, I'm just following protocol. If there's a scheduling conflict, it should be handled through facilities management. I'm only here to do my job, just like you. The room went dead silent. The junior sales staff inside froze, some mid-gesture, others mid-sentence. No one had ever talked back to Veronica Weston, especially not someone in a cleaner's uniform. Even Veronica seemed stunned for a moment. But the shock didn't last. Her expression twisted with fury. And then, without warning, she slapped Camille. The crack of palm on cheek echoed through the room. Camille staggered back, bumping into her cart. Don't you ever speak to me like that again, Veronica hissed. You are nothing here. Clean this room. Or don't bother coming back tomorrow. The sting on Camille's cheek was immediate. But it was nothing compared to the gut punch of shame that followed. In all her years in boardrooms, classrooms, and executive suites, she had never experienced anything like this. And what did the room full of witnesses do? Nothing. The junior staff kept their heads down, eyes on their laptops, pretending they hadn't seen what just happened. No one moved. No one objected. That silence? That silence hurt more than the slap. It was collective complicity, proof that Veronica Weston wasn't an outlier. She was the rule, not the exception. In that moment, Camille almost revealed who she really was. Almost told them all that she wasn't Carla the cleaner, she was Camille Taylor. Harvard-educated. Executive VP. Daughter of the company's founder. One sentence could have ended Veronica's career. But something deeper held her back. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. So she dropped her gaze, muttered an apology, and began cleaning. The red mark on her face burned like a brand. But her mind had never been sharper. This was the moment everything changed. Because the slap wasn't just personal. It was proof of a system that rewarded cruelty, protected the powerful, and left people like her, like Darnell, Maria, and countless others, with no voice. Logan Dynamics, once a symbol of integrity and innovation, had become a company where workers could be abused, humiliated, even assaulted, and nobody said a word. As Camille wiped down the glass walls of the 38th floor conference room, her mind raced. She wasn't just documenting company culture anymore. She was building a case, a dossier that would become the cornerstone of the most radical transformation in the company's history. Each interaction, each insult, every leadership failure, recorded. Names, dates, full context. Camille was no longer undercover just to understand. She was preparing for a reckoning. If you were in Camille's shoes, what would you do next? What would justice look like to you? Let us know in the comments. By the end of her second week, Camille had enough justification to walk away from her experiment. She'd endured public humiliation, verbal assaults, even a physical slap from a senior executive. But she stayed for the truth. Her first step? Turning her cleaning cart into a mobile evidence center. Hidden among the bottles and brushes was a discreet, high-definition camera and a voice recorder. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever really looked at the cleaning staff. That invisibility became her greatest weapon. With every shift, Camille captured conversations that revealed what really happened after the suits went home. She took photos of confidential documents carelessly left on desks. She recorded late-night discussions where executives spoke freely, too freely, assuming no one was listening. And what she discovered next shattered her. The same three people who had tormented her the most, Raymond, Derek, and Veronica, were at the center of something much darker. Not only were they embezzling funds meant for lower-level staff, they were also leaking confidential company data to competitors, all in a plot to destabilize the company and push her father out before she could succeed him. The evidence was clear, undeniable, damning. As the final days of her mission approached, Camille faced a terrifying question. How do you reveal the truth without burning the entire company down? If she simply handed the files to her father, they could oust the conspirators quietly, but the deeper rot would remain. A private cover-up wouldn't fix the culture. A public scandal could destroy the reputation they'd spent decades building, and punish the innocent alongside the guilty. She needed a third path. Friday evening. The final weekend before her reveal. Camille clocked out like any other night. But instead of going home, she ducked into a public restroom 3 blocks away. There she transformed, literally. The janitor uniform came off. The scarf was unwrapped. Her natural curls were smooth, styled. Designer glasses took the place of plastic frames. A subtle layer of makeup, jewelry, a tailored jacket. Camille Taylor was back. From invisible worker to executive powerhouse in under 15 minutes. She caught a ride to her father's home in Hillcrest, the gated neighborhood perched above the city. As the lights of the skyline flickered in the distance, her eyes locked on the glass tower that housed Logan Dynamics, the same floor she had scrubbed only hours earlier. The distance between those two worlds felt heavier now. Not just in class or in power, but in truth. Her father, Daniel Taylor, was waiting for her in his study. The moment he saw her face, his concern deepened. "You look exhausted," he said gently. Camille gave a small nod. "I am. But not just physically. What I've found, it's worse than either of us imagined." For 3 hours, Camille laid it all out. Emails. Financial irregularities. Video of Gerald pouring water over her. A recording of Veronica's slap. And damning data trails showing diverted payroll funds and confidential leaks to rival firms. Daniel listened in complete silence. But as the videos played, his expression darkened. When Veronica's slap echoed through the speakers, his hand clenched into a fist. When Raymond's cruelty was exposed, his jaw tightened with fury. "They've betrayed everything we built," he said finally. "Everything I stand for." Camille nodded. "That's why we can't just handle this quietly. If we want real change, it has to start from the top." Together they crafted the plan. A Monday morning emergency board meeting. All senior leadership required to attend. HR, marketing, operations, sales. Including the 5 conspirators, Raymond, Derek, Kendra, Marcus, and Veronica. The board would be told there were urgent internal matters to discuss, but they wouldn't be given specifics. They wouldn't be warned about the recordings. Or the fact that Janet the cleaner had never existed. Their reactions would be raw, real, and recorded. If you were about to confront your worst abuser in front of the people they report to, how would you prepare? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Because what happens next will shake the company to its core. Camille wasn't just going to take back control. She was about to teach the entire corporate world that no one is invisible, and no one is untouchable. Logan Dynamics, once a symbol of integrity and innovation, had become a company where workers could be abused, humiliated, even assaulted, and nobody said a word. As Camille wiped down the glass walls of the 38th floor conference room, her mind raced. She wasn't just documenting company culture anymore. She was building a case, a dossier that would become the cornerstone of the most radical transformation in the company's history. Each interaction, each insult, every leadership failure, recorded. Names, dates, full context. Camille was no longer undercover just to understand. She was preparing for a reckoning. If you were in Camille's shoes, what would you do next? What would justice look like to you? Let us know in the comments. By the end of her second week, Camille had enough justification to walk away from her experiment. She'd endured public humiliation, verbal assaults, even a physical slap from a senior executive. But she stayed for the truth. Her first step? Turning her cleaning cart into a mobile evidence center. Hidden among the bottles and brushes was a discreet, high-definition camera and a voice recorder. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever really looked at the cleaning staff. That invisibility became her greatest weapon. With every shift, Camille captured conversations that revealed what really happened after the suits went home. She took photos of confidential documents carelessly left on desks. She recorded late-night discussions where executives spoke freely, too freely, assuming no one was listening. And what she discovered next shattered her. The same 3 people who had tormented her the most, Raymond, Derek, and Veronica, were at the center of something much darker. Not only were they embezzling funds meant for lower-level staff, they were also leaking confidential company data to competitors, all in a plot to destabilize the company and push her father out before she could succeed him. The evidence was clear, undeniable, damning. As the final days of her mission approached, Camille faced a terrifying question. How do you reveal the truth without burning the entire company down? If she simply handed the files to her father, they could oust the conspirators quietly, but the deeper rot would remain. A private cover-up wouldn't fix the culture. A public scandal could destroy the reputation they'd spent decades building, and punish the innocent alongside the guilty. She needed a third path. Friday evening. The final weekend before her reveal. Camille clocked out like any other night. But instead of going home, she ducked into a public restroom 3 blocks away. There she transformed, literally. The janitor uniform came off. The scarf was unwrapped. Her natural curls were smooth, styled. Designer glasses took the place of plastic frames. A subtle layer of makeup, jewelry, a tailored jacket. Camille Taylor was back. From invisible worker to executive powerhouse in under 15 minutes. She caught a ride to her father's home in Hillcrest, the gated neighborhood perched above the city. As the lights of the skyline flickered in the distance, her eyes locked on the glass tower that housed Logan Dynamics, the same floor she had scrubbed only hours earlier. The distance between those two worlds felt heavier now. Not just in class or in power, but in truth. Her father, Daniel Taylor, was waiting for her in his study. The moment he saw her face, his concern deepened. "You look exhausted," he said gently. Camille gave a small nod. "I am. But not just physically. What I've found, it's worse than either of us imagined." For 3 hours, Camille laid it all out. Emails. Financial irregularities. Video of Gerald pouring water over her. A recording of Veronica's slap. And damning data trails showing diverted payroll funds and confidential leaks to rival firms. Daniel listened in complete silence. But as the videos played, his expression darkened. When Veronica's slap echoed through the speakers, his hand clenched into a fist. When Raymond's cruelty was exposed, his jaw tightened with fury. "They've betrayed everything we built," he said finally. "Everything I stand for." Camille nodded. "That's why we can't just handle this quietly. If we want real change, it has to start from the top." Together they crafted the plan. A Monday morning emergency board meeting. All senior leadership required to attend. HR, marketing, operations, sales. Including the 5 conspirators, Raymond, Derek, Kendra, Marcus, and Veronica. The board would be told there were urgent internal matters to discuss, but they wouldn't be given specifics. They wouldn't be warned about the recordings. Or the fact that Janet the cleaner had never existed. Their reactions would be raw, real, and recorded. If you were about to confront your worst abuser in front of the people they report to, how would you prepare? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Because what happens next will shake the company to its core. Camille wasn't just going to take back control. She was about to teach the entire corporate world that no one is invisible, and no one is untouchable. Camille took a steady breath and stepped forward, calm but unshakable. "I am Camille Taylor," she said, her voice carrying across the silent boardroom. "And as of today, I am the CEO of Logan Dynamics, appointed successor to my father." A shocked murmur passed through the room, but no one said a word. They couldn't. Not a single executive had anticipated this twist. The cleaner they had demeaned, dismissed, and disrespected was now the woman in charge. Camille didn't wait for the disbelief to settle. She reached into her blazer and pulled out a small remote, clicking it once to advance the screen behind her. Slide by slide, the room's temperature dropped. "I've spent the last 3 weeks undercover, gathering irrefutable evidence of a toxic culture within these walls. A culture that violates every value this company was founded on." The first video played. Security footage, time-stamped and crystal clear. Raymond Green, formerly Gerald Hayes, dousing Camille in cold water as she stood frozen in shock. The image of the water cascading down her uniform. The smirk on Raymond's face. The audience in the room was silent, transfixed. Raymond's face turned gray. That's out of context," he stammered. "She was insubordinate." Camille turned to him slowly. "There is no context in which assault is acceptable. Not here. Not anywhere." Click. Another clip appeared. Derek Miller, the man who had forced Camille to scrub an already spotless office for hours, belittling her with every pass of the rag. "Derek Miller, marketing director," she said, her voice even and poised. "Engaged in repeated, deliberate acts of harassment. Wasting labor hours and asserting dominance under the guise of standards." Derek shifted in his chair. "I was just maintaining expectations." She advanced the slide before he could finish. The boardroom sank further into silence. Not even a cough. No one dared interrupt. As Camille presented her final video, Veronica Blake, Senior VP of Sales, striking her across the face in front of an entire sales team. The room felt like it had frozen in time. This video has been edited. Veronica snapped, standing suddenly. You're twisting the truth. Camille pressed the remote again. A second camera angle appeared, this one capturing the slap from a perfect side angle, clearly showing Veronica's face contorted with rage, and the stunned expressions of the team watching from behind glass. Would you like me to play the audio too, Miss Blake? Camille asked, her voice slicing through the tension like a scalpel. Your words were, don't you ever talk back to me? You are nothing here. Veronica sat down, pale and speechless. Her legend unraveled in under 10 seconds. One board member removed his glasses, wiped them slowly and looked again, as if clarity might rewrite what he was witnessing. It didn't? Tell us in the comments. Which clip hit you hardest? Was it the water? The slap? Or the silence from those who stood by? Camille closed her laptop slowly and stepped aside. The once powerful executives who had ruled through intimidation now looked like shadows of themselves, lost, stunned, grasping for exits. Raymond, pale and desperate, stood up. I thought she was just a cleaner. I didn't know. The boardroom doors opened. 2 security officers stepped inside. Mr. Green, one said. You've been asked to leave the premises. Immediately. Raymond turned to Daniel Taylor, Camille's father and the company's founder. Daniel, you can't be serious. After everything I've done for Logan Dynamics. Daniel stood. His voice was quiet but carried weight that silenced the room. After everything you've done to Logan Dynamics. He stepped beside his daughter, a show of unity and authority that no one in that room could question. This isn't just about individual misconduct, Daniel said. It's about the total betrayal of everything this company was built on. Camille carried out this investigation at my request, as part of her leadership succession. What she uncovered, he paused, goes beyond anything I imagined. He looked directly at the board. Logan Dynamics was founded on 3 pillars: integrity, innovation, and respect. Somewhere along the way we lost sight of those. Starting today we take them back. What followed was swift and absolute. The board voted unanimously. Raymond Green, Derek Miller, Karen Matthews, Veronica Blake, and Marcus Feldman, the HR director who looked the other way, were all terminated on the spot for gross misconduct. Security escorted them from the building. Not a single one dared speak a word in their defense. As security escorted the disgraced executives from the building, they handed over their company devices and credentials without a fight. The firings were final, no exit interviews, no second chances. But as Raymond Green, formerly Gerald, was being led out of the boardroom, he turned one last time to Daniel Taylor, the founder of Logan Dynamics. 30 years, Daniel? Raymond pleaded, his voice cracking. I gave this company 3 decades of my life. You're really going to throw it all away over a couple of misunderstandings? Daniel's response was quiet but unflinching. You're right, 30 years is a long time, he said. Which makes it even more disappointing that you used those years to harm others instead of leading with the integrity this company was built on. Raymond didn't reply. As he was let out, Camille, now fully revealed as the incoming CEO, felt a storm of emotions rise within her. A deep sense of satisfaction. A flicker of sadness. But mostly resolve. Speech balloon, have you ever had to stay silent while someone disrespected you, knowing you'd rise above them in the end? Tell us in the comments how that moment changed you. The boardroom discussion turned next to what mattered most, healing the culture. Immediate reforms were laid out. Mandatory training on workplace respect and equity, anonymous grievance systems reinforced by third-party oversight, and leadership rotations that required senior executives to spend a week shadowing frontline staff. As the meeting ended, board members approached Camille one by one. Some offered firm handshakes and congratulations. Others, clearly shaken, expressed remorse for what had been allowed to happen under their noses. Camille stayed calm throughout. The same quiet strength that allowed her to mop floors in silence while enduring abuse now guided her as a leader. That restraint, that strategic patience would serve her well. When the room finally cleared, only Camille and her father remained. Daniel opened his arms without a word and embraced her tightly. You did something extraordinary today, he said. You didn't just expose corruption. You lived through it. You earned the kind of perspective most leaders spend a lifetime avoiding. Tears welled in Camille's eyes, not from the memories of humiliation, but from how much she had grown, how deeply she now understood what real leadership required. Daniel nodded, his voice hushed. The board wants to fast-track the transition. After today they know you're ready. Camille looked out the window at the skyline, the same view from which she'd once looked down on the world she'd just walked through. "I am ready," she said quietly. "But not because I'm your daughter. Not because I have a Harvard MBA. I'm ready because I've seen this company from the ground up. I've lived in the shadows it cast. And I know how to bring light back into every corner." She turned and picked up the gray uniform she had worn during her undercover weeks. She folded it carefully, not with resentment but with reverence. "This taught me more about leadership than any boardroom ever could. And I'll never forget it." Headphone, would you fold that uniform up, or burn it? Be honest. Let us know below. As she and her father left the room together, Camille paused beside the cleaning cart she had once pushed for hours each night. "There's one more thing I need to do," she said, "before this becomes official." The transformation of Logan Dynamics didn't happen overnight. Real cultural change never does. It required uncomfortable conversations, structural reforms, and the will to keep going when the old ways resisted the new. But 6 months after Camille's undercover mission, the company had become something rare, a corporation that walked its talk. Employee satisfaction hit record highs. Turnover plummeted, especially among underrepresented groups. Productivity and innovation soared. More importantly, respect wasn't a slogan on a wall anymore, it was part of the daily rhythm. And Camille? She had changed too. The physical labor had toughened her. Her hands had calluses now. Her posture was stronger. The invisible pain of being ignored taught her empathy, real empathy. Not the kind you quote in leadership workshops. She remembered every face that had walked past her, every nameplate on every door. And now she made sure no one else was ever made invisible again. In meetings, she noticed who was interrupted, and who wasn't. She made space for voices that had never been heard. She shook hands with maintenance crews as warmly as she did with VPs, because she had been one of them. 3 months after the boardroom reveal, Daniel Taylor officially retired. Camille took the reins as CEO of Logan Dynamics. Under her leadership, the company didn't just grow, it flourished. Financially, culturally, humanly. She had become more than a successor. She became a symbol of what happens when power meets humility and listens. Speech balloon, if Camille's story inspired you, let her know in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. Hit that like button. And subscribe so you never miss a story that challenges what leadership really means. Because leadership isn't about titles. It's about truth. And sometimes the only way to find it is by picking up a mop.